Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Tuesdays with Tiffany. We were off for a couple weeks, just summertime, vacation, et cetera. But we have 14 questions to cover today. We're going to try and hit them all within 30 minutes. A very quick update. Just on my campaign, everything is going amazing. We just finished the first quarter. Total, I couldn't be more happy. In 100 short days, we've raised close to $150,000. I still need another 150, so keep the donations coming. You can go to tiffanyforhoboken.com and find a donate button there. We had a great, amazing event at the Newman Leathers a couple weeks ago. It was on, the hottest day, I think, of the year. No air conditioning, but you know what? We ended up having about 50 people. We learned a lot of history of the Newman Leathers space. It was a really cool night. And a huge thank you to Nick DePiero, who was our host that night from Project Studios. Just really an incredible evening. If you're around this Thursday, we have a big house event down in the Southwest in the Fourth Ward. It is at 86 Madison Street, and you can find more about that and RSVP there at tiffanyforhoboken.com/events. I hope you can join. And it's really just about meeting people, talking to them. In those kind of settings, it's perfect because you can really kind of get into more detail about issues that are important to people. So I'm pretty excited about that. And we have a couple other private group meetings this week that I couldn't be more excited about. So with that, I think we will jump right in. Al, my campaign manager, Al, happy to see him again.
Hey,
And let's get started with some questions.
always a pleasure. Welcome back. And that Newman Leather event was especially fun because Tiffany got her hands dirty making pottery
I
too, and
did.
it's always good to see that kind of cut up. Maybe we
That
can
was
get pictures
awesome.
in this.
Yeah,
That'll be fun. All right. Well, we do have a lot of questions to get through, so let's jump in.
great.
First question up at bat from a real person in Hoboken. What would you do to ensure that charter school children are able to access more funding in order to ensure adequate facilities, school buildings, or to help them manage the cost for rent of their existing buildings to free up funding?
Yeah. So what in general, what I would do as mayor and what I have done is just advocate for our schools, which I always do. There's a state funding formula that is applied that allocates the funds that the public schools received out to the charter schools, and it's definitely an imperfect calculation. It's a one size fits all that applies to all of the charter schools in the state. But what I would do is work with them to understand what their needs are better and just figure out a way to help accommodate. I have spoken with and I work closely with a couple of the charter schools now and the Board of Ed actually on trying to identify additional locations for school activities. I actually recently spoke to another neighbor about trying to identify some location for one of the local private schools. One of the big challenges that we have in Hoboken is we have a space crisis, right? We're just over a mile square and we have to solve all the needs of our community, a growing community, right? A huge, our population is expected to grow another 20% in the next 5 to 7 years. And with that comes pressure on our schools, on recreation space, and everyone has their wish list and their the nice to haves, but we're going to have to start making some serious decisions on how to make compromises so that all of the needs, especially of our children in schools, are met within the remaining space that we have. So this is like a really, top priority for me. It's been a top priority for me for the last, God, since I started on the city council back in 2016, was really taking a more longer term strategic approach and making sure that we are identifying the spaces and the services that we need to meet our community. And to be honest, this administration hasn't, and we've lost a lot of ground, right? We have an administration that has allowed developers to effectively build what they want to build, as opposed to accommodating the needs, within their building envelope. So, we need a new mayor right away, and we need to step in and catch up as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that long-term approach is what Hoboken desperately needs.
It is. It is.
Yeah. All right, next question. What is the status of the auto garage on Ninth and Garden?
So the status of the auto garage is we're in the process of we just approved a lawyer drafting an RFP for a partnership for that garage to bid out to effectively build a new parking garage on that site. Whether it's retrofitting the existing structure, building something new, unclear at this point. But it's moving forward to replace that parking as quickly as possible. But I mean, it's probably, if I were guessing, 2 years from now before that parking is replaced. Just by the time we, draft the RFP, put it out, get bids, get approvals, and then do construction, it's 2 years from today. But what I will tell you is it has been my priority. We've had a couple different moments in the past where the administration, the director of the Hoboken Parking Utility, has said maybe we should look at alternative uses or maybe exiting that location in terms of parking. And I pushed back both times, and with the support of the neighbors. We do not have parking garages in the north end of Hoboken. This is one that meets a lot of needs for an area that is, not adjacent to parking garages. So we had the need before, we still have that need, and we're moving forward, with that approach.
That's good to hear. Someone else
Yeah.
also asking about the timeline of things. Uh, they wanted to know what's a timeline for getting a public pool in Hoboken, and also what's the status of the renovations at the multi-service center?
Yeah. So I think it depends on who you ask, but we have nothing's moving at this point. So I think where we stopped with the multi-service before is it very quickly became a project that was very difficult to navigate because it required, because we were focused just on that site, we have some green acre spaces there and that have to stay, or we have to be able to move it, or um, we have to build like a half of it at a time, and it would really disrupt the services that are provided. So we have the Hoboken Family Planning Clinic there that serves thousands of our most vulnerable neighbors, both in Hoboken and the surrounding areas, providing affordable health care. We have our senior center. We have a really important gym that is used by kids and adults for pickleball. We have some of the city services like the registrar. Our Department of Housing is there, and so it really just kind of stopped because we didn't know how to move forward. I will tell you, it's my you know top priority. It is my number one priority is getting the housing authority rebuilt. But the second priority that can be done in parallel is very specifically building a community center in Hoboken. And we either need to do it on the multi-service site and or we do it at the Y. We've entered into an MOU with the Y to move forward, the former Y at 13th and Washington, to move forward to redevelop that site. And I think that if we should do that, my idea is we do that, we create an uptown community center, not as big as the one at the multi-service center. We move some of the existing services into 13th Street, and then we take down the entire multi-service center and rebuild, from the ground up, a beautiful plan. Someone else said recently that maybe we can start focusing on trying to relocate the services at the multi-service to some of the empty retail spaces throughout town, and then just be able to take the multi-service center down. I thought that was a great idea as well. But regardless, I think what we need to do is focus today. And to answer the question how long it will take, it's probably by the end of this mayoral term. So 4 years is how long it's going to take to do what we need to do and have a pool open in Hoboken. And that will be my goal to have done by the end of my term.
You had mentioned, and I just want to give some space here at the top, that nothing was moving. And I wanted to ask, is that necessarily because of timing or space, or is it a political thing?
I think it's probably I think it's I think it's just a priority and complexity, right? This mayor has really progressed on things that are low hanging fruit that are good for him. Anything that is controversial, difficult, requires complex thinking, we just haven't done. And that project has it all, just purely because it would require um, moving services that our city, relies on. Um, Administrative services, like I said, the Department of Housing or senior services, it would require disruption to those in some capacity in order to build. And I just don't think that this mayor has the capacity or, interest in, trying to solve those kind of, complex issues. So I think that whoever we have as mayor next time, I'm a moth to a light bulb when it comes to complex projects. I'm all about getting all the right people in the room to solve for the right answer, not solve for the answer that's politically expedient. And so I just think if you have the right person leading, the right team sitting at the table with the right goals, which is really focused on our residents and delivering for our residents and not higher office, I just think you can climb mountains, you can make magic, there's so much you can accomplish. And to me, honestly, that's the big opportunity, pulling the crappy politics out of decisions and just really making about, getting things done, solving problems and making residents first. I'm so excited about that. That creates a lot of easy paths for wins, lots of wins for our community.
Great. Well, we've got the next question. Someone else, and I know this is an issue you're familiar with. They say every night in the middle of the night, they're up because of the loud cars and motorbikes with stereos and exhaust. Is there anything to be done, Tiffany?
The answer is yes. We just need to have more of a police presence, uptown, and I think we just need to allocate resources, in a way where we know there's these pockets of either risk or nuisance. The city council did approve, I was not a vote in support of it, expanding the table of organization by another 14 officers. And according to our police chief Aguiar, this is to create a community policing division. So now that it's been approved and they will hire, and I wasn't opposed conceptually. I'm not at all opposed to community policing to address issues like this, or to help address issues like this. I was. I just felt we have a lot of budget pressures right now, and we've seen community policing under different police chiefs. You know, when Police Chief Ferranti had retired, we had an interim Police Chief LeBou, who within 2 days of taking over as police chief, sat down and said, Tiffany, what are the priorities in the second ward? I want to, be able to address them. And it was summertime, and I said, Pier 13, the noise, everything going on, like late night, in the second ward. And within a couple of days, we had a police officer stationed up there. We had police officers just walking the beat on Washington Street. We had them, on bikes. We had them walking at the housing authority because that police chief was very focused on allocating resources, in a way that prioritized community policing. So I just think as mayor, it's sitting down with our police chief and saying, let's understand like how you run the organization. I'm certainly not, experienced as a police chief, but like, let's talk about allocation of resources. Like, what can we do that allocates resources more efficiently and more aligned with the challenges in Hoboken? And what can we do to free up resources, right? Like, what are those activities that maybe the police shouldn't be doing? And, maybe we need to have more like code enforcement officers, to take care of it. What I would say late night, when it's dark out, it's really not appropriate for anyone who's not trained as a police officer to approach a car at all. It really is a police officer that understands like how to safely approach, what to do in a crisis if someone becomes aggressive. That's not something that we're going to teach a code enforcement officer. And I can tell you, as mayor, I wouldn't allocate untrained professionals in that role. But let's figure out a way to leverage sheriff's resources. Many of the streets where we hear this noise and disruption are on county roads. But I had spoken to our probably soon to be new Hudson County Sheriff Jimmy Davis, who's currently the mayor of Bayonne, and he's committed to delivering more sheriff resources, in supporting Hoboken. So if that's something that can maybe ease and free up some of our police resources, there's a better mix there. I think we just have to be, open to it. So definitely more to do. And because I live the issue that person, that person raised, their issue is my issue. I live that every day.
Yeah, that's more strategic use of resources is
Yeah.
definitely something Hoboken is going to need with the upcoming budget crunch and those budget pressures.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, the next question,
Mhm.
a bit of a public safety one. When and how will you ensure e-bike riders follow traffic laws, keep bikes off sidewalks, etc.? How will you effectively keep e-bikes and the people of Hoboken safe from them?
Yeah, so this has been this was like my first platform piece, right? I put out both a safe streets and sidewalks platform piece as well as curbing e-bikes. I mean, it's that big of an issue. It's still that big of an issue. I was out there today downtown talking with neighbors on kind of from McDonald's down to City Hall, so Third Street down to Newark, and it still amazes me how many bikes are just riding over all over the sidewalk, how the e-bikes are riding on Washington Street in the opposite direction of traffic in the road, on Washington, not the one-way streets, on the two-way streets, which was crazy to see that today. But also at the same time, we're seeing plenty of e-bike riders that are stopping at stoplights. We see that at all. So, I think, I have a platform. You can go to Tiffany Fisher, or I'm sorry, TiffanyForHoboken.com and click on the issues, and you'll see my platform piece. But I still think it comes down to enforcing the test and vest ordinance that we put in place, 2 years ago now. That Mayor Bala and Councilman Jabour, Councilman Cohen, Councilman Quintero heavily resisted, wanted that ordinance to fail. But I still think that educating our e-bike riders, enforcing and having them wear vests so that they're more visible is still a critical policy that I will ensure is enforced. Excuse me. And second, even though we just talked about how the use of code enforcement officers like late night isn't appropriate, when it is appropriate? It's appropriate during the day. And this doesn't mean that we have to have, excuse me, an HPU officer has to go and hand out violations. But you know what? Like, I was on the sidewalk today and I just thought if I had the ability to give violations, if I was an officer, I would just walk up to some of these guys and say, hey, you're not allowed to ride your sidewalk, your bike on the sidewalk. Hey, I just saw you go through a stoplight and you can't do that. You will get a ticket. And just kind of walk up and down and educate all of them, make them feel like they're accountable for these basic laws, right? The basic laws. So I just think between code enforcement officers, and education and test and vests. I think holding the two other things, holding the food delivery, the e-bike, not the e-bike, but the food delivery companies like Grubhub, Uber Eats, et cetera, accountable via requiring that they have a business license locally to operate, or they can't operate, having them required to have a liability insurance, kind of a blanket liability insurance for all their riders, I think are important steps. Boston's doing that right now. And lastly, I think partnering with the restaurants and holding them accountable and saying, hey, you cannot give food to any e-bike rider that doesn't have a vest on, right? Like that simple. We hold the restaurants accountable and make them be a part of it. So there's definitely a lot more to do. And it's going to be a top focus of mine day one as soon as I get in, and we can just, once we have a change in regime and we actually have people that are open to having a conversation about how to improve safety, like at the granular level and what we need to do, and are willing to have difficult conversations and the right people sitting at the table. I mean, again, we can accomplish so much if we just run the city better, right? It's that simple. This is a great
Sky's the limit.
topic. Sky is the limit.
And it really stinks what you were talking about earlier, that politics gets in the way of good policy, because when that happens,
Yeah,
it's the people of Hoboken who suffer.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of restaurant owners and other business owners and even tenants, someone's asking if there's anything to be done to get them to keep their storefronts more aesthetically pleasing and visually appealing.
Yeah, the simple answer is yes. I don't know if people are watching this know that I founded the Hoboken Business Alliance. And when we originally put that together, it was a group of about 20 local property owners and business owners. We did a 2-year feasibility to create the special improvement district. And one of the exercises we did was identifying priorities, both short term, medium, and long term priorities. And on that list was really beautifying Washington Street and doing it a number of different ways. But one of them was very specifically storefronts. And I do think that there's something that we can do both as a city, maybe from a zoning or a building code standpoint, in partnership with the Hoboken Business Alliance to be able to incentivize or disincentivize, incentivize for improvements, maybe even putting art in the windows or, certain posters in the windows so they look like they're occupied when they're not, or disincentivize them to have the storefronts fall into a state of disrepair. There's definitely more that we can do there. And we've already kind of laid some of the groundwork. We just need, again, it just comes back to having it be a priority and actually having, people that have a willingness to work together and not work against each other to accomplish that. We've done a lot on Washington Street, right? Because it was a priority of the members of the Hoboken Business Alliance to make our main commercial corridor be as attractive as possible, right? So we put the bistro lights in and lit up. That was something that myself and Greg Delaquila did. The one of the original or the first or second president of the HBA, a big developer locally. We have the hanging flower baskets. We constantly have the flags up in Washington. We have the landscaping or the big flower pots at all the different corners. And we started the process to have a more unified look on the sidewalks. They fixed tree beds. We do power washing of the sidewalks. So there's been a lot that's been done to maintain Washington Street, but there's definitely more that we can do, and we can do it in partnership.
See, that's great to hear. I think um, moving on, the next person is asking something as a sort of a corollary there. They're saying that parking, and they're saying especially in North Hoboken, but I bet those in South Hoboken would would say it's just as bad. That it's impossible. They don't even host anymore because it's so bad and hard to find parking. So what can we do about parking?
Let's start by saying the person that's doing the most for parking is me. And, you know, there's going to be some people watching this that are, going to shake their heads and say, how can we prioritize parking? We have to get rid of cars, et cetera. And, two things can be true at the same time. But we have to acknowledge that our existing population has cars. And while we can do things that disincentivize additional cars coming in, we can charge more for second and third cars at various locations. Um, you know, but what we need to do is we need to acknowledge that we have a parking issue, that people do have cars, and we need to focus on making public transportation more accessible to more people so it's a real option so people don't need to have a car. We had corner cars were put in years ago. We have one of the most successful in the country corner cars. They're used all the time, right? And people choose not to have a car because they can go and rent a car for 2 hours at a corner. We've talked about expanding those. We have a great bus system in Hoboken, but the bus system called the Hop is just it's used, but it's not something that is universally known, and it doesn't provide easy access for all of Hoboken, and it really hasn't addressed like the areas of growth within Hoboken. But if we can come up with a transit system within Hoboken that would allow people, for example, in Northwest Hoboken to easily get to Southeast Hoboken, or people in Northeast Hoboken to easily get to Southwest Hoboken, and vice versa. Like if we can come up with a transit system, which is what I have a plan for, then that's something we can do in parallel to reduce reliance on cars while at the same time addressing the parking needs. So I'm very vocal that I'm opposed to the Garage B development, not because I want to choose parking over affordable housing, because that's not the case. But that parking garage serves 800 people in Hoboken, 800 cars. It's full all the time. We, at the same time, are developing or working in partnership with the Hoboken Hospital, which I sit on the board to redevelop the hospital. That will disrupt that parking garage, which is another 700 cars. So, like, we're, taking 1,500 cars out of parking garages, the majority of them that are monthly has a real impact on, availability of street parking. So like we need to get 916 Garden built again, right, with 300 parking spots. We need to build the municipal parking garage that's being slated for the north end in Hoboken, right behind the gas stations, that I've been like championing to make sure it's part, of that. We need to add parking spaces if we're going to take parking spaces away, while at the same time really working on improving our public transportation so that people are less reliant on cars. But they're not mutually exclusive. We need to do both. But the one thing that this administration, the prior administration, hasn't done at all is given airtime or even acknowledging the real parking needs within our community. And we need to do that, which is what I've done, my entire time on the city council.
Yeah, I recall all of those anecdotes and stories that you continue to tell voters as I watch you talk to folks who are about sticking up for the existing parking and making sure that that's taken into account. All part of that long-term planning thing we were talking about
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So the next person's talking about a high school. We're going to need one. Do we have a plan to pay for it?
So the Board of Ed sent out a survey couple months ago, and I know they're in the process of doing a facilities review and trying to identify how do we get capacity within our schools. I'm not sure their goal is a new high school. I think the goal is capacity additions at the elementary school, but the way to do that is to build a new high school because it allows the current high school to be used as a middle school. It allows us to take the middle school and upgrade it and turn it into a fourth elementary school. I mean, we have a real challenge, right? I've been talking about the explosion in youth and children since I've been on the council in 2016. I don't think there's anyone in the city other than the superintendent and a couple people in the Board of Ed that knows more about the enrollment growth, in the city. And we're just bursting at the seams. So I don't know specifically what the plan is. What I do know is we need a better relationship between the mayor's office and the administration and the Board of Education. Again, this comes back to we have a real crisis. We have a space crisis in Hoboken. And because of that space crisis, if we don't address the needs of our community, we're going to miss that opportunity to have what we need. And to me, there's no greater need than schools to accommodate our kids. And remember, we have something like with just 14 large projects, excuse me, we're going to see approximately 13,000 more residential, I'm sorry, uh, 6,200 more residential units. And 6,200 more residential units with about two people on average per unit, you're talking about 12,000 more people, right? That's another greater than that's another 20% increase in our population. So when you think about our schools that are already bursting at the seams, the pre-K programs, the elementary schools, we're now our enrollment wave is rolling into the high school. It started way back when in 2010. That was the tip of the enrollment wave. That is this year's graduating senior class. Like we went from a graduating class of 100 to about 140 year over year. Every class behind it is bigger than the year before at every single grade. And so now we're going to add 20% more kids into that mix. And when the kids come in, they come in at the lower grade level, right? Their families, people move in. They're not necessarily moving in with eighth graders. They're moving in with either not having children or young children, and they're starting their kids in our school and they're going through the school. So we've always kind of felt this, or at least, in the last 15 years, we felt the real pinch points at the lower grade levels. And you've seen the Board of Ed has kind of moved the pre-K programs out of the schools because the regulations for a K through 12 program are much more strict in terms of what constitutes a classroom. So pre-K can actually be moved into like ground floor retail space, et cetera. There's more flexibility, and they've been doing that. They're doing everything they possibly can, but I don't know what the current exact plan is, and I don't know what the plan is to pay for it. My guess is it will be paid for through a bond. But I've made some suggestions to the Board of Ed about maybe partnering with some of the other local schools that need some space on the site that they're considering if they in fact do go back to the football field to build, or just maybe even some other creative uses that would allow them to monetize a portion of their property to help, help supplant those costs. So, we'll see. I imagine we'll probably see something, in the next few months. It wouldn't surprise me if they put something out in the middle of this election and made it an election issue.
Of course. That's good,
Yeah,
good strategy.
yeah.
All right. Well, create a crisis. So, it appears that construction is underway inside the former Hudson Tavern site. What's the latest on that and the Story dispensary?
Sure. So, this is an ongoing saga that started years ago. I remain on top of it. I reach out to the CRC all the time, and I've gotten a ton of questions. And it continues to be a moving target every day. As of last Thursday, I spoke with the CRC, and Story Dispensary has officially been denied for their application. They had submitted their application over 3 years ago. They were given a denial with conditions. I don't know what the conditions were, but they effectively haven't done anything in 3 years. So I've been actively all over the CRC, and I think they went back, they looked and said, you know what, we're just going to issue a denial. My understanding, what I have heard from some people that are close to the original sponsors, is the original owner was a woman named Samantha Silva. She was a named owner, 26-year-old woman, lived in Hoboken, Latina. Her existence as a majority owner is what allowed them to have priority application before the state. And she has moved out of state, so she actually doesn't qualify as an owner anymore. And that, in my understanding, is she is trying to pull out of the ownership. So if they resubmit an application, they will no longer have a priority application. They'll just go to the end of the line. But they're just taking the risk because they're building it out, and they're just taking the risk that they're going to get approval for that at some point. I think the big question is what reapprovals are they going to need locally, and what laws apply when they are looking for those reapprovals. So it's still, an open issue. I wish it was closed forever, but we are of the belief that they won't be able to get local approvals, and we're working on trying to understand the implication of that.
Interesting. Okay.
Hmm.
Well, we're running short on time, so I want to run through the rest
Okay,
of these relatively
great.
quickly as
All
I
right.
introduce this question.
Okay.
Homelessness. What are we going to
Yeah.
do about it?
A lot more than we're doing right now. In its simply put, homelessness is something that I work on all the time, and I work on it way more than our mayor does, way more than any other city council person does. We've been able to get. This was something that was Jen's big issue before she passed, and she passed that along to me years ago. She just kind of brought me along and said, "This is an issue for me. It needs to be an issue for you." Um,
Jen Giatino,
we
the
have
former council
Jen
person.
Giatino, yeah, and
Yeah.
you know, we um, we have so many amazing resources that are, trying to address this issue within the county. But one of my observations in talking with people that work at the homeless shelter, people that work for Garden State Episcopal, the Hoboken Community Center, the Waterfront Project, et cetera, is we have a lot of well-intended people that kind loosely communicate with each other and officially communicate. But I think we need to get everyone in a room and figure out how we more officially work together, including the Hoboken Hospital, including the library, and including all of the other resources, in the region. This is a nationwide issue. We are suffering, the biggest issue I think for America is adults without a stable future. And when you start taking safety nets away and you move jobs overseas, we're creating this terrible situation where people are increasingly have mental health issues because they have stress from not being able to have a roof over their head, et cetera. So we're not going to solve that macro issue locally, but what we can do is maybe work more efficiently within the county and work with the county and work with Craig Guy's Affordable Housing Task Force and figure out a way to connect more dots on a more official basis so we take a more regional approach to this. There's a lot we can do, but I do want to stress that this is the people that work with our homeless. It's a, these are heroes among us. And They should be celebrated and supported all the time. And, this is an issue that's important to me. We've had some successes getting housing for some of the people in Hoboken. And, it's something I just want to keep doing and do what we can to, you know, get as many people housed as possible.
Yeah, I cannot stress enough for listeners that it is frequently the case where we're having a meeting or about to have a meeting, and you're sending these texts like, I'm addressing an emergency. One of our homeless neighbors is in crisis, and I'm addressing that so frequently. But it's necessary.
Yeah.
All right. Um, Rapid fire. The last three questions here. Can you do anything about the insane cost of flood insurance?
So, not today, but hopefully soon enough. As soon as we get Rebuild by Design done, we're supposed to get a huge benefit. We will have a new FEMA map that should bring down flood insurance costs on the dry side. On the wet side, it shouldn't be any higher than it was. What I would say is it's not just flood insurance costs. I mean, we have, my all of my insurance costs have gone up dramatically. My property insurance, my flood insurance, my liability insurance, and the same thing for the city. Even if you set group health aside, just property and liability insurance for the city has gone up dramatically. We are seeing, especially with like climate change, it's rippling through companies, across the country. These huge costs of natural disasters that are happening that aren't even insurable anymore. So, and as we start hearing about macro policy of cutting FEMA, it's trying to figure out who's going to bear the cost of natural disasters, and I don't think we know what the answer to that is. But at least locally, we should be able to get some benefit as soon as Rebuild by Design is done.
Okay. The next question, they're saying Murphy's new laws about condo association reserves is having a huge impact on small property owners. Um, can you address that?
Yeah, there's if people are watching and they're on Facebook, there is a Facebook group called Hoboken Condo Association that I would encourage you to just join. It's a great group of people that are in condo associations that are struggling through this issue, and sometimes they're asking for referrals for like new property managers. It's a great place to share information. This issue is a tough issue, especially for more condos. This came from what happened in Florida, where we saw a building, like half of the building, just collapse because they didn't maintain the structure of their building. Hoboken is a little bit unique in that we have row houses that the structure is being held up by the houses next to them, like tightly fits. So we don't necessarily have the same risk. But this is something that I've already spoken with our state senator Murkegi about, trying to figure out a way to address the safety concerns, but have it be more of an income or more of an economic impact that can be spread over a couple of years. What I would say is, for home prices, home values, the best thing you can do is have a well-funded reserve for your condo association. But for people that are, maybe they have 4 or 5 condos, in one property, and suddenly have to, put in $20,000 worth of reserves. That's, $4,000 or $5,000 check per condo. That's not a small dollar amount, right? So, how can we do it? How can we really acknowledge our risk versus maybe risks in other areas? It's not a one size fits all law, and figure out a way to have it make more sense for Hoboken. That's something I will definitely continue to work with our state representatives on.
Excellent. All right. Well, final question for the day. Owning up, if somebody wants you to own up to your support for Harris in the presidential election.
I saw that question come in, and I know who it came from. It came from the former chair of the Hoboken Republican Committee, who I worked with when I was the chair of the Hoboken Democratic Committee at the exact same time. We jointly worked together to get rid of some corrupt poll workers that we had. We needed a bipartisan approach to doing that. It was the reason why I decided to actually run and be a part of the Democratic Committee at the time. So listen, my neighbors know I'm a Democrat. I happily supported Harris Walz, and And we created a group called Uniting for Harris Walls. Liz Urtecho and I did that. We got a lot of great energy that wanted to go and support the candidate that we thought would make the best president. And if other people think a different candidate was going to be a better president, like, I'm respectful of that. I've always had a lot of support across all parties, independents, Republicans, Democrats, people of all parties, because at a local level, our races are nonpartisan and the issues are local. They're all about our local community. And as long as that is priority number one in this race, I'm just respectful of people and whatever choices they've made politically. Like, we need to make sure that we have democracy in our country. We need to make sure that we have debate, that we debate issues. We will always get a better outcome when we can debate issues. But where I personally fall, and candidates that I mostly have supported are Democratic candidates. And if people are curious, my number one issue is income inequality. And I just feel like we, as a country and as a government, we kind of need to step in and do more for people that have less. And that rhetoric and those policies feel more aligned with me on the Democratic side. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. You're
Happy to
running
own
to
it.
be the mayor of everybody in Hoboken,
I am running to
not
be the mayor
Republican
of
or Democrat,
everyone.
or those who voted for you and don't vote for you, right?
100%. 100%. People are going to vote for a lot of different reasons. They're going to vote for their next door neighbor. They're going to vote for, someone they saw on TV, right? And they're going to vote because they may be a single issue voter on one issue that's most important. And, I hope that I will be able to get the most votes so I can be mayor. And when I'm mayor, I'm still going to be mayor for everyone. If you're someone who, lives in town, is concerned about safety walking down the street, and you voted for a different president than I did, that has nothing to do with whether or not I want you to be safer. Nothing at all. So, yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, that's the end of Tuesdays with Tiffany for today. Tiffany, thanks as always for your time. Where can the people find you?
You can find me at tiffanyforhoboken.com. That's my mayoral website. You can also find me if you want to see content. I'm very content rich. You can also go to my second ward council website, which is HobokenSecondWord.com, Hoboken 2, N as in Nancy, D as in David.com. That's where you can find a lot of like my old newsletters. You can find my old platform. Believe it or not, if you look at my old platform, it's the same as my new platform. I've been incredibly consistent on policies for the decade that I've been running. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Threads. You can find me on TikTok, but I don't really put anything on TikTok yet. I haven't figured that out. So yeah, I'm everywhere. And most importantly, if you have any question, you just send me an email. Just send me at tiffany@tiffanyforhoboken.com, and I'll answer any question. Unlike a lot of the people that are running against me for mayor are more politicians than they are, they're more about giving you the answer they think you want to hear than just giving you an answer that you may not want to hear, right? Like, we have a lot of tough things going on in Hoboken right now, and what we need is someone who's brave enough and willing enough and smart enough and with the integrity and experience to address the tough issues, right? The tough issues, and help the people that need it the most in our community. Anyone that is unwilling to address tough issues and just wants to talk about softballs, all day long, those are not people that should be elected mayor. That's just not what our city needs right now. So, yeah.
Yeah. Politicians versus public servants.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and thanks to Al for being the host for the most, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.